that the person whose cake broke as it rolled would die or be unfortunate within the year. These cakes, or bannocks as we call them in Scotland, were baked in the usual way, but they were washed over with a thin batter composed of whipped egg, milk or cream, and a little oatmeal. This custom appears to have prevailed at or near Lxii in Inverness-shire. In the northeast of Scotland the Beltane fires were still kindled in the latter half of the 18th century, and herdsmen of several farms used to gather dry wood, kindle it, and dance 3 times southways about the burning pile. But in this region, according to a later authority, the Beltane fires were lit, not on the 1st, but on the 2nd of May, Old Style. They were called bonfires. The people believed that on that evening and night the witches were abroad and busy casting spells on cattle and stealing cow's milk. To counteract their machinations, pieces of rowan tree and woodbine, but especially of rowan tree, were placed over the doors of the cow houses, and fires were kindled by every farmer and cotter. Old thatch, straw, furze, or broom was piled in a heap and set on fire a little after sunset. While some of the bystanders kept tossing the blazing mass, others hoisted portions of it on pitchforks or poles, and ran hither and thither, holding them as high as they could. Meantime the young people danced round the fire, or ran through the smoke, shouting, "Fire! Blaze and burn the witches! Fire! Fire! Burn the witches!" In some districts a large round cake of oat or barley meal was rolled through the ashes. When all the fuel was consumed, the people scattered the ashes far and wide, and till the night grew quite dark they continued to run through them, crying, "Fire! Burn the witches!" In the Hebrides, "the Beltane bannock is smaller than that made at St. Michael's, but is made in the same way. It is no longer made in Uist, but Father Allen remembers seeing his grandfather make one about 25 years ago. There was also a cheese made, generally on the 1st of May, which was kept to the next Beltane as a sort of charm against the bewitching of milk produce. The Beltane customs seem to have been the same as elsewhere. Every fire was put out and a large one lit on the top of the hill, and the cattle driven round it sunwards to keep off murrain all the year. Each man would take home fire wherewith to kindle his own." In Wales, also, the custom of lighting Beltane fires at the beginning of May used to be observed, but the day on which they were kindled varied from the eve of May Day to the 3rd of May. The flame was sometimes elicited by the friction of 2 pieces of oak, as appears from the following description. "The fire was done in this way. 9 men would turn their pockets inside out, and see that every piece of money and all metals were off their persons. Then the men went into the nearest woods and collected sticks of 9 different kinds of trees. These were carried to the spot where the fire had to be built. There a circle was cut in the sod, and the sticks were set crosswise. All around the circle the people stood and watched the proceedings. One of the men would take 2 bits of oak and rub them together until a flame was kindled. This was applied to the sticks, and soon a large fire was made. Sometimes 2 fires were set up side by side. These fires, whether 1 or 2, were called coilsurth, or bonfire. Round cakes of oatmeal and brown meal were split in 4, and placed in a small flour bag, and everybody present had to pick out a portion. The last bit in the bag fell to the lot of the bag holder. Each person who chanced to pick up a piece of the brown meal cake was compelled to leap 3 times over the flames, or to run thrice between the 2 fires, by which means the people thought they were sure of a plentiful harvest. Shouts and screams of those who had to face the ordeal could be heard ever so far, and those who chanced to pick the oatmeal portions sang and danced and clapped their hands in approval, as the holders of the brown bits leapt 3 times over the flames, or ran 3 times between the 2 fires." The belief of the people that by leaping thrice over the bonfires or running thrice between them they ensured a plentiful harvest is worthy of note. The mode in which this result was supposed to be brought about is indicated by another writer on Welsh folklore, according to whom it used to be held that "the bonfires lighted in May or midsummer protected the lands from sorcery, so that good crops would follow. The ashes were also considered valuable as charms." Hence it appears that the heat of the fires was thought to fertilize the fields, not directly by quickening the seeds in the ground, but indirectly by counteracting the baleful influence of witchcraft, or perhaps by burning up the persons of the witches. The Beltane fires seem to have been kindled also in Ireland, for Cormac, or somebody in his name, says that Beltane, May Day, was so called from the Lxii fire, or the two fires, which the Druids of Erin used to make on that day with great incantations. And cattle, he adds, used to be brought to those fires, or to be driven between them as a safeguard against the diseases of the year. The custom of driving cattle through or between fires on May Day or the eve of May Day persisted in Ireland down to a time within living memory. The 1st of May is a great popular festival in the more midland and southern parts of Sweden. On the eve of the festival, huge bonfires, which should be lighted by striking two flints together, blaze on all the hills and knolls. Every large hamlet has its own fire, round which the young people dance in a ring. The old folk notice whether the flames incline to the north or to the south. In the former case, the spring will be cold and backward; in the latter, it will be mild and genial. In Bohemia, on the eve of May Day, young people kindle fires on hills and eminences, at crossways and in pastures, and dance round them. They leap over the glowing embers, or even through the flames. The ceremony is called burning the witches. In some places an effigy representing a witch used to be burnt in the bonfire. We have to remember that the eve of May Day is the notorious Walpurgis night, when the witches are everywhere speeding unseen through the air on their hellish errands. On this witching night, children in Voigtland also light bonfires on the heights and leap over them. Moreover, they wave burning brooms or toss them into the air. So far as the light of the bonfire reaches, so far will a blessing rest on the fields. The kindling of the fires on Walpurgis night is called driving away the witches. The custom of kindling fires on the eve of May Day, or Walpurgis night, for the purpose of burning the witches is, or used to be, widespread in the Tyrol, Moravia, Saxony, and Cilicia. End of chapter 62, part 1.